The goals of stylistics. Texts and their functions. The analysis of style includes discovering the purpose or effect of a text. The texts that we frequently encounter in our everyday lives include newspapers, magazines, or a menu. One of the features on the basis of which we can recognize texts is their text type or genre. The uses of language for some specific purpose, such as for academic lecture or news broadcasting, require recurrence of certain features over a period of time, thus determining their genre and having a specific style. This requires the use of certain features of language more than others within the texts formulated for these purposes. It is easier for us, and is part of our everyday knowledge, to understand the purpose of a genre due to its recognizable social functions. Social events fulfill social purposes. The events may make use of language and may have a distinct structure. For example, the purpose of a newspaper story is to inform the readers about some significant event, or a menu is to make the customer buy food out of the available variety of options. A non-linguist can pick up these features through intuition, whereas linguists analyze these features through some modes of description as provided by the methods of stylistics. It may be noted, however, that the occurrence and use of such features may vary with a particular context and situation. The textual features of a genre may vary, and there can be overlaps among genres depending upon how they are used and at times exploited by the writers or speakers. For example, political speeches are delivered by the politicians with the intention to convince the audience of their opinions and legitimize their actions without any presence of doubt. The role of a genre and subsequently its features are highly dependent upon its social function, but these functions may vary, or authors/speakers' hidden intentions may also affect their choice. Therefore, the text type and the style adopted may come in conflict. Consider the growing role of corporate culture in academic genres such as university websites, which may have a primary informational purpose to guide the prospective students but may have hidden promotional purposes of attracting the students. The genres thus developed for the informational purpose may resemble the features of advertising genres due to some hidden unidentified purposes. In this regard, the concept of register is useful for expressing the presence of distinct features dominant in texts belonging to particular genres. A particular style, such as legal style, religious style, or advertising style, is used through the adoption of a register. The users of language may intentionally adopt different registers at the workplace, at home, or with friends, for example. Therefore, the rationale behind stylistic analysis emerges from different ways users may express themselves in a given context. Their choices are reflected through the selection of linguistic features and arrangements as recurring or regular patterns and structures. What functions can a literary text fulfill? It is comparatively easier to relate the features of such texts on the basis of their social functions, since the texts belong to immediate social situations and have, to an extent, defined purposes in a given social context. The question then arises for the texts that are not related to social life and fall in the domain of literary genres. Thus, for literary genres such as poetry, novels, and plays, how can we determine the textual function? This question is difficult to answer, since a particular literary text may be written keeping in mind a variety of purposes by the author. However, there are a few observations that we can make regarding the nature of all literary genres. The foremost feature about them is that they have no direct relation with our immediate social life. This is primarily because there is no worldly social context existent in such texts. Since they are removed from the immediate social context, such texts are not governed by the immediate social constraints and conventions. They can, however, exist as mere representations of the social world and provide us with alternate ways to express ourselves. The removal from social context allows writers of literary genres to make peculiar or distinct uses of language and break the norms and conventions of language for making readers experience certain intended emotions. The effect of such usage might be different on each individual due to their own background experiences and personal attitudes. Such language use may provide us as individuals an escape from the social boundaries of life and experience emotions in our own way. The function of literary language thus is not socializing but individualizing. The very fact that non-literary texts have their meaning derived from their context of occurrence makes the significance of such language as temporary. In contrast, the imaginary context of literacy texts generates a feeling of constancy. Consequently, in the light of this discussion, the idiosyncrasies and ingenuities of language use carry more importance in literary texts than everyday language use due to its capacity to arouse, satisfy or disappoint our emotional experiences. Therefore, stylistics helps in describing or explaining a particular literary text. It can explain the principles underlying the choices made by the writer/author of the text. As explained earlier, the goal of stylistic analysis is to study the style of a text, which can be further used to achieve the following. The analysis of a literary work can be aimed to showcase the individualistic style of an author through which the writer stands out and is known for that peculiar style. Writers may possess or adopt a unique style that may reflect their individual idiosyncrasies. Famous authors are known for their individualistic styles such as Shakespearean style or style of Charles Dickens. It is difficult to identify all features of an author's works, but the focus of analysis can pertain to the identification and interpretation of peculiar and salient aspects of an author's style. It can be used to highlight the choices made by an author to make a text stand out or reflect the requirements of a domain. A text can be made different through some drastic deviations from the norms of language and genre. The deviations can be studied by making comparisons with commonly used genre conventions and language varieties to see how an author makes his/her work noticeable. The style could also be analyzed to point to the times to which a text belongs and can be used to highlight certain characteristics peculiar to that time, such as the Victorian era or style of Old English. This type of analysis accounts for the features common to a particular group of people at a particular point in time. Careful attention is required in this regard to the selection criteria in order to generalize language habits to that particular group. A stylistic analysis may be conducted to highlight the use of language in a particular social context or situation. Instead of exploring the peculiarities of language use, this type of analysis focuses more on the effectiveness of the language used. It aims to analyze how well a text fulfills its intended purpose through the careful choice of language forms and structures. A stylistic analysis could focus on various levels of linguistic analysis including graphological, syntactic, lexicosemantic, pragmatic, and discourse. It can study various figures of speech as well as organizational patterns of texts to analyze style.